Can you give a little bit of background to yourself?
Sure. I'm Japanese, but I was raised in the United States. My whole background's been finance. I used to run yen bond trading for JP Morgan for a long time. Most recently, I was a portfolio manager for Millennium, running the Japan macro strategies for them. And then I came into this world about a year ago.
So banking and trading, and now you're the chief executive of Animoca Brands Japan. I'm sure people around are familiar with Animoca Brands as a concept, as an idea, as a business. But what's special about the business in Japan? How does that differ from the other business units of Animoca?
Right. Okay. So I'm not sure if people here are aware of Animoca Brands. Animoca Brands is a combination of about 380 companies that is building a Web3 ecosystem. Now from Japan, let's see, oh, here it is. Up on the screen up there, what we're doing in Japan is we have two big strategies. One is to really work with the Japanese IP. So we're working with the Japanese manga, anime. We were set up in Japan as in partnership and as our investors with 𝐲𝐤𝐬𝐭𝐞𝐧, as well as some of the biggest financial institutions, Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi, Sumitomo Trust, Dai-ichi Life. All these big institutions have come in to support this initiative to bring Japan IP to the world and also Japan to Web3. Now, I'm not so sure how many people here are aware, but the Japanese government has announced Web3 as the national growth strategy. So it is the strategy for Japan to take the whole economy to Web3, and we are literally in the heart of doing this. Now, the reason me as a financial background, how I got involved is I see this play as a securitization of IP. So this is basically, we're taking IP, we're securitizing it into NFTs, metaverses, marketplaces, gaming, esports. This gives us the utility which Animoca is so good at. And of course, go to what I call the asset management layer, which is your blockchain DeFi and your wallets.
Got it, thank you. So you talked about securitization of intellectual property or
Correct.
Financialization of intellectual property. We're talking about this outside in the room. Now, in my mind, intellectual property, the Mickey Mouses, and the content, so the cartoons, the movies, etc., the physical assets. These are all monetizable anyway. So what's different? What's new? How are you what does financializing mean in this context?
So Web3, as I think most of us here in the room know, that the ownership of these digital assets will change. And I think given that the digital ownership changes, it also means that the way content is funded, the way it is made, and the way it is packaged will change as well. And from a Japanese context, Japanese IP, Japan is very rich in IP. I think we all understand that, but has been a feeding ground for GAFA. So it's been brought a little bit to the world, but obviously not to the level of Disney or DC Comics. So I think with Web3, with the way ownership is changed, with the way that it is going to be distribution will change as well. And I think this is where we see so much potential for Japan, where it is so rich in culture, so rich in IP, and it has really been a feeding ground.
What do you mean by feeding ground? Who's feeding on what? Sorry.
Well, you take, for example, if you look at the valuations of American companies and you look at the stock market, and you look at the stock market of Japan, I think I write it on here, but the market value of intangible assets in Japan is only 15%, where the US is 85%. Now, of course, it's not all from Japanese IP, but a lot of the Japanese IP is being fed into the US market cap, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Netflix, whether it be, whatever it is. And it's being sold for a very very cheap price, to be very fair.
Got it, got it. So without putting words into your mouth, what I'm taking away is, in Japan, creators aren't paid enough. There's not enough money going back to creators.
For sure.
Compared to the rest of the world, say, or the US market.
This is public, information, but capacity of Japanese production houses are full for the next 3 years. However, 40% of them are in the red.
Oh, in the red.
In the red.
Right. So they're working really hard. They're really busy, but they're losing money.
Well, they're losing money, but their production is
and the value we ascribe to these companies, the public ones at least. You're saying that the value ascribed to the intellectual property that they own and they're creating, we're ascribing much higher value to exactly the same thing if they were US-based than we are when they're Japan-based. And you think that Web3 kind of unlocks some sort of value there?
Web3 will allow these IPs to be owned and shared by the community themselves, which means that all the middlemen that has distributed Japanese contents and IP some of them are no longer be needed, which means that the unlocking of the Japanese IP in Web3 will mean direct access to the communities that love this IP globally.
Does that mean people have to pay more for their content?
I hope not.
Okay, so more money is going back to the originators of the content.
Originators, creators. I think we're all about supporting the creators. We're supporting the IP in this. Yes.
So here, look, guys, we've been talking about NFTs previously. We've been talking about profile pictures and 10K PFPs and art and assets in metaverses. But here, this is a different story coming out specifically of Japan because of its unique characteristics. But you've got a different story. This is about the unlocking of value through the financialization or securitization of intellectual property using NFTs, using Web3?
I think so. I actually like to make the kind of explain it similar to like a real estate. So, I put content origination on the right-hand side. If you like origination primary markets, just like you do in securitizing assets, asset-backed securities or REITs. This is where you're creating, originating NFTs. Just minting something doesn't really create value for the NFT. What can you do with it? You've got to put utility to it. I think there's 3 things that always bring value to anything. Utility is first of them. What can you do? Where can you do? Where can you go? Second is rarity. Of course, we all know that in NFTs. And third is liquidity. So the middle section of all the metaverses and gaming provide the utility. Marketplaces give you the liquidity. And that's just what Animoca is so good at with 380 companies that we have invested in. And Animoca Japan will work with those companies to really give that utility and the market, the liquidity of these assets.
Got it. Thank you. Earlier on, you mentioned MUFG, the bank, or the large financial conglomerate, I guess. Where does a bank come in? And correct me if I'm wrong. Where does a bank come into all of this minting an NFT, selling it on OpenSea kind of picture?
Yeah. So this goes to my second pillar of business, which is really bringing Japan to Web3. Now that Japanese government has announced for Web3 to be the national growth strategy, we're seeing more corporates that are interested in Web3, maybe more than individuals at the moment. There's a lot of laws that are being changed. NFT white paper was already released. There's a version 2 that is coming up.
So who's releasing this white paper?
The government.
Okay, so it's like a policy document or something?
Yes, it's a policy document, correct. We're in the heart of helping them draw this. A lot of laws will be changed. Many of it should be announced next April in the first diet session, hopefully. Of course, I don't control that, so don't quote me on it. But it's definitely, even from the tax laws that are being changed. And a bank, obviously, given that they look at this, they look at NFTs as a new asset class. And we are working with them to work with a lot of corporates in Japan to go Web3. We think many things will go Web3. CRM models, whether it be
CRM, customer relationship
management, like Salesforce. Yeah, basically all the data that will come out of Web3 to your booking systems, to you name it. So I think a lot of things, the way you marketing strategies should change. So a lot of things, the way companies are going to operate in Web3 will completely change. Now, we're working with the bank on the B2B side of things to help corporates adopt. We're also working with the B2C side, using their retail side as well to do a mass adoption into Web3.
So if I'm understanding this rightly, you're suggesting that NFTs, if used in the way that you think they'll be used, will be more game-changing from business models and the way businesses work than fungible tokens or coins?
Possibly, quite possibly. Yeah, I do think the first steps, at least for Japan, how it's looking, is NFTs will probably be more utilized than fungible tokens, maybe, quite possibly, just because of all the laws that are binding financial tokens at the moment. Now, probably, hopefully, with all the changes in laws, especially around taxes and listings and all that, we'll see that change in the latter part of next year. But that's something that we need to kind of hope for. At the same time, we are working with the government and trying to push for that as well.
Wow, so Japan could really take the lead here middle of next year if all these things come to pass. Globally.
I really do think that there's a chance that Japan could be a leader in the space. And I think it's really interesting. The past year I've been speaking to many corporate leaders. And it's because Japan lost out in Web 1 and Web 2 that a lot of the corporates are jumping on Web 3 not to miss the boat. What I'm hearing is we don't understand Web 3, but we understand that if we do make a move, if we wait until we understand it, it's too late. And that's the biggest lesson that these corporates have learned in Web 1 and Web 2.
I'm getting digitization vibes and blockchain vibes and all of those kind of vibes back again. Okay, so you've got a partnership with the banks. We don't have long. We've got a couple of minutes left. You also mentioned relationships with publishers, right?
Correct.
So what are the mechanics there? What's going on? What are you helping them with? What can you help them do that they can't do by themselves?
Well, I think publishers have been working with the authors and creators in Japan for hundreds of years. Kodansha, Shueisha are our investors or our partners in this business.
So no one knows who they are.
Sorry. These are, for example, we have announced Ghost in the Shell, Fairy Tale from Kodansha.
So these are the largest.
These are some of the biggest IPs in Japan, and even if you're on a global scale. But I think it's fair to say that they have not been able to monetize these things as well as Disney has or Marvel has. And I think in Web3, they are willing to come in and to really do this. So, and it's because they really lost out on Web 1 and Web 2, and they realized that. So we are working with them in terms of how do we create and how do we repackage a lot of these IPs that they have in their library.
Fantastic. Okay, so my takeaway from this, it's been a very short conversation, but my takeaway is watch out for changes going on in Japan in the middle of next year as it relates to NFTs, changes in tax laws and in other regulations, and especially the impact will be in the B2B markets rather than profile pictures or that kind of thing. Is that the right takeaway?
I think you could say that. I think you could definitely say that. There's, I think even before that, I think there's going to be a lot of changes that's going to be announced in terms of regulations and laws. They're really pushing for this. So even the announcements of the law changes will come probably first quarter of next year, hopefully. Of course, it's political, so I wish I controlled it, but I don't. But yes, that's going to be correct. Yes.
Awesome. Let's keep an eye on Japan. Guys, thank you very much. Please make a round of applause for Moto.